What if I told you that scientists just found something in the Middle East that could change everything we thought we knew about the Bible? I'm talking about physical proof, real evidence that's been hidden underground for thousands of years. Look, for as long as anyone can remember, people have wondered, did those incredible Bible stories really happen? Were they just teaching stories, or did these amazing events actually take place in real life? Well, what researchers recently dug up might finally give us some answers. This discovery is so significant that experts who study ancient history are completely blown away. We're talking about findings that could prove one of the most unbelievable miracles in the Old Testament wasn't just a story. It might have actually happened, exactly like the Bible describes it. But here's what you need to know first. To really understand why this discovery is so mind-blowing, we've got to go back to one of history's most dramatic escape stories. Picture this: an entire nation of slaves, a furious ruler who won't let them go, and a miracle so impossible that it sounds like pure fantasy. Trust me, once you hear the full story and see what archaeologists found, you'll understand why this could be the most important biblical discovery of our lifetime. And hey, if you're fascinated by mysteries from the past and want to see more videos about incredible archaeological finds, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. So let's start at the beginning. According to the Bible, Moses was just a regular guy tending sheep when something extraordinary happened. God spoke to him through a bush that was on fire but never burned up, and gave him an impossible mission: go back to Egypt and free his people from slavery. Now, you'd think the Egyptian king would just let them go, right? Wrong. Pharaoh basically told Moses, absolutely not, and refused to free the slaves. That's when things got really intense. The Bible says God sent 10 terrible disasters to Egypt. We're talking about rivers turning to blood, swarms of locusts, and darkness covering the entire land. Finally, after all that devastation, Pharaoh gave in and said, "Fine, take your people and get out of here." So picture this: over 2 million Israelites pack up everything they own and start heading toward freedom. But here's the problem: Pharaoh changes his mind again. He sends his entire army after them, hundreds of war chariots, soldiers on horseback, Egypt's most elite warriors. These people are armed to the teeth and they want those slaves back. The Israelites are walking along, probably feeling pretty good about their escape, when they realize they're in serious trouble. In front of them, a massive body of water, the Red Sea. Behind them, the sound of Egyptian chariots getting closer and closer. They're completely trapped with nowhere to run. This is where the story gets absolutely incredible. The Bible tells us that God told Moses to stretch his hand out toward the water. And then something that should be impossible happened. The sea literally split apart. I'm talking about massive walls of water standing up on both sides, creating a dry path right through the middle of the sea. The Israelites walked across on completely dry ground. But when the Egyptian army tried to follow them, Moses stretched out his hand again, and boom, those walls of water came crashing down, wiping out the entire army. Now, fast forward to today. Marine scientists have been studying the ocean floor between Egypt and Saudi Arabia, and they found something that's blowing their minds. There's actually a natural underwater bridge connecting the two coastlines, and it's only about 100 feet below the surface. But here's where it gets really wild. This underwater ridge is completely different from the rest of the Red Sea, which drops off super steep on both sides. This bridge is wide and gently sloped, perfect for a massive group of people to cross if the water wasn't there. And that's not even the craziest part. Divers exploring this area have found coral-covered objects that look exactly like ancient chariot wheels. Some are perfectly round, others have clear spoke patterns. When they tested these objects with metal detectors, they found traces of bronze and iron, the same metals used to make chariots thousands of years ago. A researcher named Ron Wyatt was one of the first people to document these findings back in the 70s and 80s. Now, Ron Wyatt's discoveries caused a huge debate in the archaeological world. Some experts questioned his methods and conclusions. But here's the thing: other independent diving teams have gone to the same location and photographed these same coral formations. Even the skeptics have had to admit that these objects look incredibly similar to ancient chariot wheels, and the location matches exactly what the Bible describes. So after this miraculous sea crossing, where did the Israelites go next? According to the Bible, they headed into the desert toward Mount Sinai, the famous mountain where Moses received the 10 Commandments. For hundreds of years, tour guides and historians told everyone that Mount Sinai was located in Egypt, down in the southern part of the Sinai Peninsula near an old monastery. But wait, there's a problem with that theory. The Bible clearly states that after crossing the Red Sea, the Israelites entered a region called Midian. And guess what? Midian wasn't in Egypt at all. It was in what we now call northwestern Saudi Arabia. When Ron Wyatt made it across to the Saudi Arabian side, he found a mountain called Jabal al-Lawz that completely changed his understanding. This mountain had something really striking about it. Its peak was blackened, like it had been burned by intense fire. And that's exactly what the Bible describes happening at Mount Sinai. The book of Exodus says that the whole mountain was covered in smoke because God came down on it in fire. The Saudi government actually put a fence around this area for years and wouldn't let anyone get close to it. But recently, photos and videos from this location have started appearing, and they show some pretty incredible connections to the biblical story. Near this mountain, there's an ancient well that local Islamic traditions, going back over 1,000 years, say is the exact spot where Moses first met his future father-in-law's daughters. And get this, right nearby is an oasis full of palm trees that locals still call Elim. The Bible mentions that the Israelites camped at a place called Elim that had 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees. The location and even the name have survived for thousands of years. But that's just the beginning of what they've found in this area. Close to the base of the mountain, there's this huge stone structure made entirely of rough, uncut rocks. Now here's what's fascinating. The Bible specifically says that God told the Israelites to build their altars using stones that hadn't been shaped or cut by tools. This structure matches that description perfectly. When archaeologists started digging around this stone altar, they found something really significant: huge piles of animal bones. These could very well be the remains of sacrifices that the Israelites made during their time camping at the mountain. Around this whole area, researchers have discovered rows of standing stones. Some experts think these might be ancient grave markers. And here's a chilling possibility. The Bible tells us that when the Israelites made that golden calf and started worshiping it, God punished them severely. 3,000 people died that day as judgment for their rebellion. Speaking of that golden calf incident, guess what else they found? On the rock faces around this mountain, there are faint carvings of bulls and calves. It's like ancient graffiti that's been sitting there for thousands of years, silently telling the story of what happened when the people turned away from God. Now, I've saved the most incredible discovery for last. On a hilltop not far from all this, there's a massive rock formation. We're talking over 50 feet tall, and it's split right down the middle. At the bottom of this giant split rock, the stone is carved with deep grooves and channels. Here's what's mind-blowing about this. These grooves show clear signs of massive water erosion. But remember, this is in the middle of a desert where it barely ever rains. So how did powerful water erosion happen in one of the driest places on Earth? The Bible has an answer for that. It tells us that when the Israelites were dying of thirst in the desert, God told Moses to strike a rock with his staff, and water would gush out to save the people. Could this split rock be that same miraculous water source that kept over 2 million people alive in the wilderness? Now, you might be wondering why this water from the rock story is so important. According to biblical scholars, this wasn't just about solving a water shortage. It was actually a preview of something much bigger that would happen thousands of years later. The first time God told Moses to strike the rock, and water flowed out. But later in their journey, when the people needed water again, God told Moses to simply speak to the rock this time. Instead, Moses got frustrated and struck it again, which actually got him in serious trouble with God. But let's get back to the mountain itself, because this is where things get really incredible. Jabal al-Lawz towers above the desert landscape, and its peak is completely blackened, like it's been burned by incredibly intense heat. But here's the strange part. When geologists examine the rock, the burn marks are only on the surface. The inside of the rock is completely normal. That matches perfectly with what the Bible describes, that Mount Sinai was covered in smoke because God came down on it in fire, and the whole mountain shook violently. At the base of this mountain, there's something that will give you chills. There's a natural rock formation that looks exactly like a giant stage or platform, and it overlooks this massive flat area that's big enough to hold millions of people. You can almost picture Moses standing on that natural platform, holding the stone tablets with the 10 Commandments, while over 2 million Israelites waited below. So here's what all of this means. If these locations in Saudi Arabia really are the authentic sites from the Exodus story, then we're looking at physical proof that these incredible biblical events actually happened. We're not talking about fairy tales or legends passed down through generations. The sea really did split apart. Moses really did receive the 10 Commandments on a mountain that caught fire. Water really did gush from a rock in the desert. These discoveries suggest that some of the most unbelievable stories in human history actually took place exactly where and how the Bible describes them. And if that's true, it changes everything. These aren't just ancient stories. They're evidence that the miraculous is real, and it's been preserved in coral formations, blackened rocks, and desert stones for thousands of years, just waiting for us to find it. But here's what really gets me about all of this. The same God who split the Red Sea in half to save his people, he's still making impossible ways for people today. That rock that provided life-saving water in the desert? It points to something even more powerful that's available right now. Look, we're living in a time when a lot of people think faith is outdated and the Bible is just a collection of old stories that don't matter anymore. But these discoveries? They're like the desert itself is speaking up, saying, actually, this stuff really happened. These aren't just cool archaeological finds to put in a museum somewhere. They're evidence that the God who did impossible things thousands of years ago is still the same God today. Everything else in this world might change or fade away, but these discoveries remind us that some things are absolutely eternal. So what's your take on all this evidence? Do these discoveries change how you think about biblical history? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And hey, if you're fascinated by archaeological mysteries that might prove biblical events really happened, you definitely want to subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell. We've got so many more incredible discoveries to explore together. Thanks for joining me on this amazing journey through history. I'll catch you in the next video.